Hello my beautiful hammerheads and welcome to another gameplay overview for Rivenstone, Part 8 Terrain. So you can find these posts either on the Kickstarter page. When you scroll down a little bit, then you have all these blog posts right here, or you can just go to the Broken Anvil Miniatures homepage and here with BAM news. Just here in the bottom, it starts with gameplay part 1, the overview. If you're curious for the lore and this is your first video, you can also find the lore for every faction as of right now, also in this BAM news, or you can click the link in the top right corner of this video. Also, I will link the playlist in the description box down below. Terrain overview. Terrain in Rivenstone has keywords that determine how models interact with it and how it affects the action in the game. The most common interaction between a model and terrain is whether a model can move through that terrain or not. The default state of all terrain is that models cannot march through them and that they do not block line of sight. There are fixed types of terrain that have specifically assigned keywords, but players should also feel free to use any terrain at their disposal and discuss which keywords are most fitting for each piece. A single terrain feature can have multiple keywords, in which case you take all of them into account. Setting up terrain. Customizing the battlefield with terrain is just as important as the choices each player makes when building their warbands. There are no strict rules for setting up terrain, as that would hamper creativity in the types of battlefields players could create. That said, we do have some guidelines for setting up terrain that will help create a balanced gameplay experience for both players. When setting up terrain, players can either agree to the final placement of terrain features, whether placed by one or both players, or take turns placing a terrain feature until both players agree they are done. The right amount of terrain improves every game. Playing on a wide, open field denies players the challenge of using the terrain creatively and can quickly become monotonous. We recommend using at least 6 medium-sized terrain features, bigger than 2 inch by 2 inch, but no larger 5 inch by 5 inch. And 4 smaller scatter terrain features, not larger than 2 inch by 2 inch. This ensures that both players have enough terrain to affect model movement, block line of sight, and obscure models. Terrain keywords. The keywords for terrain are defined here. Barricade. This terrain can obscure a model when targeting it with a missile or magic attack. We haven't covered obscuring in a previous video, but effectively, if a model is within close range of a terrain feature that can obscure it, and there is a straight line between the attacker and the defending model that passes through that terrain, the defending model can burn a vigor to gain 2 bonus dice on their defense roll. Hindrance type. Models can march through this terrain, though it can be difficult. A model whose base is not touching this terrain feature when it begins a run action cannot overlap this terrain feature with a measurement tool unless it burns a vigor. The type listed in brackets is referred to by other rules, such as abilities that allow models to ignore the hindrance of certain terrain types. For example, a model might ignore the hindrance forest keyword, but not the hindrance debris keyword. The common types of hindrance are debris, forest, muck, sand, and water. Impasse. Models with flight cannot place a range tool overlapping this terrain while marching or being pushed. Models without flight cannot pass a range tool overlapping any terrain unless it had a keyword that allows it, but models with flight can. Impasse, however, is truly impassable. Nothing is getting across it without teleporting or using some other kind of trick. Perilous. insert peril here, models that contact or place a ranged tool overlapping this terrain while performing a march move can suffer damage. To determine the damage amount, roll a number of skill dice equal to the terrain feature's perilous value. For each blank rolled, the model suffers 1 damage. So for example, if a model crossed a piece of terrain with a perilous 2, they would roll 2 skill dice and suffer a damage for each blank rolled. Shroud. This terrain can obscure a model when targeting it with a missile or magic attack. Additionally, it is impossible to see through. If a line cannot be drawn from anywhere on the attacker's base to anywhere on the target's base that does not cross this terrain, the attacker does not have line of sight to the target and cannot attack it. If a terrain feature with Shroud has an additional keyword that makes it possible for models to enter or climb it, such as traversable, there is an exception for the rules for determining line of sight. In this case, models within the terrain can draw line of sight out of it as if it did not have Shroud, and similarly, models outside the terrain can draw line of sight to a point within it as if it did not have Shroud. Summit. This terrain feature has an elevated platform a model can stand on. Rivenstone features rules for climbing and jumping off terrain with the summit keyword. Some things are easier to climb, such as stairs, while climbing up the side of a wall can require a model to burn vigor and march a much shorter distance than their normal speed. And of course, there are rules for fall damage as well, for when you push your enemy models off the castle walls with a well-timed melee attack. Traversable. This terrain does not affect models' ability to move in any way. Predetermined Terrain. These are common terrain types in Rivenstone. Rivenstone Deposit. A large outcrop of magical crystal. Rivenstone deposits have the barricade keyword. Low Wall. A solid linear object approximately as tall as the tide range on the measurement tool. Low walls have the barricade and traversable keywords. High Wall. A solid linear object taller than the tide range on the measurement tool. High walls have the Shroud keyword. Spike Wall. A low line of sharpened stakes designed to prevent attackers from moving into the area. A spike wall has the barricade, perilous one, and traversable keywords. Boulder. A large rock, too uneven to stand on. Boulders have the barricade keyword. Forest. An area of tall foliage. Forests have the hindrance, forest, and shroud keywords. Fog bank. An area of mist that limits visibility. Fog banks have the shroud and traversable keywords. Shallow pool. An area of water that can be waded across. Shallow pools have the hindrance water keyword. Poison pool. An area of shallow water that has been tainted by Rivenstone to a toxic level. Poison pools have the hindrance water and perilous 2 keywords. Ruins. The remnants of a structure that has crumbled over time. Ruins have the shroud keyword. Ruins with intact roofs or higher floors have the summit keyword. Piles of rubble within ruins can give them the hindrance debris keyword. Tall tower. A narrow structure many times the height of a human. Tall towers have the shroud and impasse keywords. Complex terrain. Not all terrain features are as simple as a wall or a pool. Particularly large or complex features often have terrain keywords that apply only to certain parts of the terrain. In situations like these, treat the overall terrain feature as several smaller terrain features placed together and assign keywords to each of the smaller parts however makes sense. For example, consider a tall castle wall with parapets and a central gate. The gate would be given the traversable so that models can move through it freely, while the wall itself could be given shroud to block line of sight. The parapets could be given traversable and summit so that a model that reaches the top, perhaps from another terrain feature or a ladder along the wall, can move freely along the top of the wall. Real-world examples. Let's take a look at some of the awesome terrain Michael Archer has built for the tables at Broken Anvil headquarters and discuss which keywords would apply to each. This stone arch would be considered a low wall, thus it would have both the barricade and traversable keyword. Models could freely move through this arch and also take cover behind it. Here we have a complex piece of terrain that we're going to need to break down into multiple sections with different keywords. The large stone pillar itself is large enough to block line of sight, so we're going to say it has the shroud keyword. The rocky area below looks difficult to traverse, but is something models should be able to move across, so it makes sense for it to have the hindrance debris keyword. The platform up top can be reached by models that climb the ropes up to it and is easy enough to move around on freely, so we would give it the summit and traversable keywords. We would also think that the climb up to the top is not easy. It involves going straight up a small rope, so this type of climbing would require models to burn a vigor and lose some of their distance when marching up to the top. Finally, since the pillar directly beneath the platform has the shroud keyword, we would agree that models atop the platform are considered to be in the shroud and thus could draw line of sight to other models and vice versa through the pillar. So this was a chunky blog, but an important one. Terrain is so important for tabletop strategy games, not only for immersion, but also for kinda balancing each faction against each other. And of course, many other reasons, but I'm tired. So I love keywords. Keywords are our friends. And thank Broken Anvil Miniatures for giving terrain keywords. Of course, you can make rules for terrain in which every piece of terrain reacts differently to you. But keywords give us the opportunity to make our own terrain. Thank you. There is nothing else to say from my side. Thank you. So what are your thoughts about terrain keywords? Please leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section down below. I am keen to know what you have to say. And while you're down there, do all the YouTube stuff because hitting buttons is fun. Have a great day, my friend. Stay fantastic. Stay hydrated. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.